Good day, everyone. We're the group three, and we're going to talk about our presentation named Pandemic History Repeats Itself. The spread of a pandemic caused by COVID 19, also known as coronavirus, has been a major problem this year. Diseases, on the other hand, have spread throughout human communities throughout history. One of the first documented cases was the spread of an infectious disease known as Black Death, which is also known as bubonic plague that occurred in Upper Eurasia from 1346 to 1353. It was the worst pandemic in the history, killing over 75 million to 200 million people in Eurasia and North Africa, with a peak in Europe between 1347 and 1351. Pandemic may be caused by a variety of factors, and some of these factors have driven an increase in pandemics in the 20th and 21st centuries. The spread of disease has been accelerated by the loss of natural biodiversity, increasing human to human interaction in cities, and greater worldwide travel. As time passed by, pandemics that sweep over broad geographic regions and eventually devastated humanity throughout history. Furthermore, here's a list of some of the main pandemics that have happened during the 20th and 21st centuries.
The first pandemic on the list is Spanish flu, the most severe influenza outbreak of the 20th century and in terms of total numbers of deaths, among the most devastating pandemic in human history. This influenza pandemic was caused by a vicious influenza, a virus strain of subtype H1N1 that is now known to have been the cause of the extreme mortality of this pandemic, which resulted in an estimated 25 million deaths, though some researchers have projected that it caused as many as 40 to 50 million deaths. The pandemic lasted from January 1918 to December 1920. The Asian flu, which began in East Asia in February 1957 and spread to countries all over the world, is a well-known example of a pandemic. The pandemic was caused by avian influenza of category 2 that began in China in early 1956 and lasted until 1958. It came about as a result of a wild duck mutation mixing with a pre-existing human strain. The 1957 flu pandemic, which killed an estimated 1 million to 2 million people globally, is often regarded as the least severe of the three influenza pandemics that struck the 20th century. Furthermore, in 1957, the H2N2 pandemic was delayed by the introduction of a vaccination. In 1958, a second wave emerged and H2N2 became a regular part of the yearly flu season. The H2N2 Asian flu vanished from human population in 1968 and it is assumed to have gone off in the wild. The third pandemic, the Hong Kong flu pandemic of 1968, was one of the worst. The worldwide influenza pandemic began in China in July 1968 and continued through 1969 to 1970. H2N2 influenza, a virus which derived from H2N2 through antigenic shift, a genetic process in which genes from several subsets reassorted to produce a new virus, was responsible for the pandemic. In addition, an estimated 1 million to 4 million people died as the result of the flu pandemic.
The human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, is a virus that targets CD4 cells in the immune systems. Scientists have linked HIV to chimps and simians immunodeficiency virus, or SIV, an HIV-like virus that affects monkeys and apes' immune system. This is a type of virus that kind of affects your immune system and weakens it, and therefore make you very vulnerable to all other viruses and infections. The epidemic of this virus happens in 1980s and early 1990s, and it's spread over the rest of the world. Blood, sperm, vaginal fluids, and anal fluids and breast milk are all examples of bodily fluids that can spread the virus. Since the beginning of the pandemic, more than 70 million people have been infected with HIV, and about 35 million have died from AIDS. SARS is a highly contagious respiratory infection marked by prolonged fever, headache, and physical discomfort, followed by a dry cough that can escalate to severe breathing difficulties. SARS is caused by coronavirus, a virus that is commonly linked to pneumonia and the common cold. In November 2002, the world's first confirmed case of SARS was discovered in China's Guangdong province. It was carried to Hong Kong's major district by an infected doctor. Global travelers swiftly spread it from Hong Kong to East Asia, North America, and Europe. By the end of May 2003, there had been over 8,000 cases reported, most of which were in mainland China and Hong Kong, with 800 people dying as a result of the virus.
So let's proceed to the last slide. In this slide, we'll talk about the importance, relevance, and conclusion. The first one is importance. The importance of this brief history of the pandemic is that it allows us to understand what happened in the past and adapt the processes, protocols, and methods used by previous generations to fight the pandemic. Next is the relevance. The historical relevance of this presentation is that it allows us to comprehend the sequence of prior pandemics, which has a significant influence on what we are doing currently in the midst of the pandemic, since we have adapted and refined the methods and techniques we have learned in the past. Lastly, in conclusion, pandemics are inevitable in the end, and there will be more of them soon. We must learn from the history of the past pandemic so that we may respond more effectively to the present pandemic we are experiencing. However, we can see today that history is repeating itself because we're unable to understand or value the lessons of the past, and therefore we are doomed to repeat them. But hopefully, we will be more prepared in the future and will not repeat the same mistakes that we did today. That's all. Thank you.